Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Senior Director of Research and NVIDIA Distinguished Inventor, Dr. David Lubke.
Thank you. Thank you. Welcome, everybody, to the third and final keynote as we wrap up GTC 2014. I'm really happy to be here. I'm here to introduce our third keynote speaker. I want to talk a little bit about that. But first, I'm going to share some other things that we want to celebrate and sort of recognize that have happened this year at GTC. So, first of all, I hope you've had a chance to see the Emerging Companies Summit. It's gone on. It's something we've done since the beginning of GTC, where we seek out and foster and recognize and showcase the many companies that are emerging, that are coming out of our ecosystem, that are growing and helping to take GPUs, NVIDIA technology, and bring it to the world, to do amazing things with it. And there's a couple of competitions that we have every year at the Emerging Company Summit. Not so much competitions as celebrations, recognitions, okay? Many different companies get up, dozens of companies get up, they talk about their work, they explain what they're doing, they show how it's going to change the world. And every year, a few are picked, and they're given the title Ones to Watch, all right? These are the companies that are worth watching, really exciting companies that are doing something that really stands out, something that has great potential to move the needle. And I'm delighted to recognize this year's Ones to Watch Award. AudioStream TV, doing really fascinating work integrating audio and video and image processing on a mobile platform to give you a new way of experiencing television, something as basic as television. Holographica, who builds a light field display that lets you see in true 3D, lets you walk around something and see a true 3D light field of whatever it is you're visualizing or whatever entertainment you're experiencing. Scream, who builds a GPU database engine that, as you might expect, is fast. Mainframe 2, they have a cloud workstation. Think of a one-click web page where you click once and you're immediately launched into a workstation application. Xfire is a gaming platform for developers. And I want to take a moment to notice that, you know, the GPU Technology Conference kind of grew out of GPU computing, grew out of CUDA and all the work that we're doing there. And one thing you'll notice, if you've been paying attention, is that this year it's really expanding to contain the entire NVIDIA ecosystem, gaming and mobile, and of course compute, also graphics and visualization. I think these 5 Ones to Watch companies really typify and exemplify this expansion of not so much of the GPU ecosystem, but of this conference and the way that we bring in and absorb and improve on and evolve the entire ecosystem surrounding NVIDIA. So please give a hand to the 5 Ones to Watch Awards from the Emerging Company Summit. Now, we started a new award this year. This is the first annual Early Stage Challenge, where a few companies get up and have, you know, sort of a death match, without the death, but they get up and they get up on stage and they really pitch their very early stage companies. You know, some of these companies don't have web pages yet. They're really early stage, but they've got incredibly exciting concepts. They've got something really special in technology that they're sharing with the Emerging Company Summit attendees. And this year we decided to have this early stage challenge, and I'm delighted to announce that the winner is MapD. They do big data analytics. Imagine ways of analyzing, visualizing, and understanding what's going on Twitter, right? What's going on with campaign contributions, really large amounts of data that are sort of flowing in, and you need to analyze them and understand them somehow. So this is the winner of the first annual Early Stage Challenge, MapD. Please give another hand for them. And next I want to talk about posters. This is another tradition that we've had since the beginning of GTC, and I really think that for those of us who were there at the very beginning, who sort of grew this conference, it was a real aha moment to us when we decided, let's have a poster competition, or not a competition, let's have a poster session. Let's have people bring posters and show the world the work that they're doing. And that first GTC, I remember we were nearby, we were in the Fairmont, and the halls were just lined with poster after poster after poster, just showcasing the incredible diversity, the incredible reach, and the incredible quality of the science and engineering that was being done with GPUs. And it was really eye-opening, I think, not just to those of us who were organizers of the conference, but also the attendees. I think we really sort of realized that there was something special happening when you saw just poster after poster after poster. And the posters program has grown every year. We give people a lightweight and fun way to showcase their work, to share it with other people who are passionate about GPUs, GPU computing. And as you have seen all week long, as you've sort of roamed the halls, again, the quality and diversity is really just astonishing. This year we decided we needed to do something to recognize all of the effort that the poster submitters are putting into these posters, and of course the science behind them, the really high quality research that they represent. And so we decided to have a Best Poster Award. And how this worked was there was a panel of NVIDIA researchers, NVIDIA engineers, who looked at all the posters and picked 5 posters that they felt were really the best of the best. They represented great science, they were well explained, and there was something really exciting. If you sat there and read this poster, you'd leave a little more excited and a little more knowledgeable than you started. And so I'm delighted to announce the finalists for Best Poster. I won't read them to you, there's a lot of words up there. But the 5 finalists, Marcin Krust from the University of Montreal, Tian-David Han from the University of Toronto, Therese Jones from Harvard, Abhinav Sarje from Lawrence Berkeley National Lab, and Mikhail Vladimirov, from Lebedev Physical Institute. Now, I'm delighted to announce the winner of the Best Poster Award, who not only gets to reflect in the glory of this amazing new tradition, but also a $5,000 cash prize. Tian-David Han is a PhD student at the University of Toronto. Please give him a hand. Thank you. David's work is really about auto-tuning. It's about using building a programming system that can help you get performance more easily and by more completely exploring the space of configuration that a CUDA program can run in. And in this case, they use machine learning, this sort of new approach that uses machine learning that really extends the reach of how far you can sweep the parameter space and how deeply you can optimize with how little effort as a programmer you have to put into it. So it's really exciting stuff. OK. There's a set of individuals that NVIDIA recognizes called CUDA Fellows. So CUDA Fellows, it's a program that we started again several years ago when we realized that there were people who were really, people outside NVIDIA who were really our best evangelists, our best salespeople, not because they were selling anything, but because they were doing outstanding science with GPUs, with CUDA. And they were telling everybody in their field about it, telling everybody in their university about it, in some cases telling everybody in their entire geographical region about it. And so we decided to create a program to recognize and reward and help this set of individuals who really just help bring CUDA to the masses, help sort of catch the world on fire with CUDA. And I'm delighted to announce this year's class, the new inductees into the CUDA Fellow class. There's 4 of them. Rich Brower is at Boston University. Alan Gray is at the University of Edinburgh. Bormin Huang is at the University of Wisconsin-Madison. And Bin Zhu is at Shandong Academy of Sciences. And their fields range from quantum chromodynamics, sort of quarks in extremely small scale, to soft matter physics, to computational fluid dynamics. They're all doing amazing work personally, and they're all going to great strides to share the excitement that they have about this work and how GPUs are helping them, and share that with their larger community. So please join me in thanking and applauding the new CUDA Fellows. All right, moving from individuals to institutions. We have a set of universities worldwide that are they are among the very best worldwide institutions. All of the best schools that you can think of, are represented in this list. There's a set of schools where the research that they're doing, powered by CUDA, powered by GPUs, is not only very deep, is not only is excellent research in a particular field, but it's also very broad. It spans many different fields, many different departments, many different institutes, often many different schools within a university. These are universities that have broad and deep and important research going on. They do They do outreach, they do education, they bring people in both within the university and also externally from other universities, from other institutes to teach them about CUDA. They often build large clusters that they make available within a community or to the general science world. These are the CUDA Centers of Excellence. And so for the last couple of years, we've decided to do something to recognize and celebrate all of the amazing achievements that are happening at these CUDA Centers of Excellence. And we decided to make sort of a friendly competition. So for a couple years now, we've had a competition essentially where each of the CCOEs, the CUDA Centers of Excellence, submits an achievement, a single thing that they've done, that involves CUDA, that involves GPUs. They submit this one achievement. It might be a very broad achievement, like helping to educate the community, or it might be something very specific and narrow, some particular narrow but important, always vitally important scientific contribution. And then there's a panel of researchers at NVIDIA that picks the 4 finalists, and then the finalists, who I recognize here, will get up and each give a talk, a 15-minute talk, to their peers, to the other CCOEs, and describe this achievement and what they've done. And then you are voted on by your peers. Each of the CCOEs casts a vote, and we pick a winner and give them a prize and give them a plaque and recognize and celebrate this particular CUDA achievement. And so you see our 4 finalists this year: the University of Illinois at Urbana-Champaign, which worked on the HIV virus capsid. The Innovative Computing Laboratory at the University of Tennessee, Knoxville, which did groundbreaking work in sparse linear algebra, bringing the power of GPUs, which has always been vast for linear algebra, bringing that to the problems in sparse linear algebra, which are important across so many disciplines. Shanghai Jiao Tong University, which is one of our newest CCOEs, but already one of our most active, is really helping to bring the power of CUDA to China, really, and really showing the Chinese research community how much power there is, and making a big GPU supercomputer available globally. And Tokyo Tech, which has done amazing work in supercomputing consistently over the years, and their latest achievement is to literally take a GPU supercomputer and immerse it in mineral oil and build a liquid-cooled supercomputer that is the most efficient supercomputer that has ever been built, the most performance per watt that has ever been built. They call it the Kepler Fluid Cooled. Tsubame is the name of the computer. This is Tsubame Kepler Fluid Cooled, or also known as Tsubame KFC. Has nothing to do with Kentucky Fried Chicken, despite the baking in oil, I'm told. So I'm delighted to announce that this year, the CCOEs voted and picked their peer, the University of Illinois at Urbana-Champaign, for the really amazing work that they've done in characterizing an atom-by-atom molecule. We have now a complete atomic understanding of the HIV-1 capsid. The capsid contains the RNA for this virus, right? The capsid is the destructive warhead, if you will, of the HIV virus, and we now understand its structure literally down to the atomic level. And this incredibly important work will undoubtedly have ramification repercussions as we try to fight this deadly disease. So please join me in thanking and recognizing all of the CUDA Achievement Award finalists, and especially the winner, the University of Illinois at Champaign. Thank you. All right, one last thing, and it's new. So, recognizing the importance of achievements like what I just described, NVIDIA has decided to create an annual award. We call it the NVIDIA Global Impact Award. It's $150,000. The winner will be, the program is being launched now. The winner will be awarded 1 year from now at GTC 2015, and we're going to do it every year. And the goal of this award is to recognize groundbreaking work that tackles key social and humanitarian problems. And there are so many possibilities here. What's important is that you're doing work that is socially important. And of course, this could include many things. This could include disease research, right? This could include drug discovery. This could include medical imaging, or weather prediction, or energy efficiency, fuel efficiency. natural disaster response. There are so many possibilities here. This is going to a research institute, essentially nonprofit research institute. The exact rules are up at the website you see, impact.nvidia.com. That's live now. I encourage you to check it out. And maybe your research will be the winner of the NVIDIA Global Impact Award next year. So please check it out and submit your groundbreaking research. We're really excited to sort of launch this program for recognizing and rewarding, very directly, work that truly has a global positive impact. Speaking of next year, I have one last announcement to make, which is that GTC 2015 will be held right here in the San Jose McHenry Convention Center next year, April 28th through May 1st, pushing it a little bit later. We got a lot of feedback that March was just a little too early, conflicted with a few other things, so we're pushing it back a little bit. I'm personally happy about that. I hope you are as well. So I look forward to seeing you next year at the end of April 2015, right back here in San Jose. And now, let me proceed to introduce our keynote. We have a long tradition of keynotes at GTC. Every year we've had at least one keynote that really focuses hard on science. We really want to sort of celebrate, recognize, dwell on the extraordinary science that people are doing with NVIDIA technology. And I'm just delighted to recognize this year's speaker, Dr. Adam Gazzaley. He's from the University of California, San Francisco. He's the founding director of the Neuroscience Imaging Center there. And he's going to tell you about the work that he's done. Now, Adam got his MD and PhD in neuroscience at the Mount Sinai School of Medicine in New York. He has a clinical residency in neurology at the University of Pennsylvania. He did a postdoc research on cognitive neuroscience at UC Berkeley. He's an associate professor now in neurology, physiology, and psychiatry. He's published dozens and dozens of papers and scientific articles, including work published in Nature. You'll hear something about that today. He's given hundreds of invited talks, and his work has really permeated and been picked up by the popular press. He's been featured in the New York Times, the Wall Street Journal, Time, Wired, NBC, PBS. He actually comes to us here from South by Southwest, where he was sort of warming up the talk, getting it ready for GTC. He's written and directed a PBS special called The Distracted Mind, and he has more honors and awards than we really have time to list. So without listing them, simply please join me in welcoming Dr. Adam Gazzaley.
Thank you. Welcome. Thanks, NVIDIA, and thank you all for being here today. I'm excited to share with you some perspectives today on video games, cognitive enhancement, and the future of how we can improve our brains. I just want to start with the goal. This is a goal that has driven me for 20 years in this field, to improve quality of life. It may seem like an obvious one for someone coming from the medical world, but I can tell you that this is not a goal that I share with all my colleagues. There are many people that are working on extending the length of our life, our lifespan. We already know that we pay a great burden for that. We have neurodegenerative diseases such as Alzheimer's that are reaching epidemic proportions as we live longer and longer. So I think the focus should be on living a better life. And that's what I'm here to tell you today, an approach to do that. So one way is that we can develop a system, an approach to enhance cognition, both in healthy and impaired individuals. By cognition, I mean how our brain processes information in its most fundamental ways, from attention, perception, memory, decision-making. When you think about this from the perspective of healthy people, you're essentially talking about what the core is, or should be the core of education, right? It's not just about transferring content, but actually improving how our brains process information. And when you think about this from the perspective of those that are impaired, it really is the goal of our mental health care system to improve how the brains of those that are suffering either psychiatric or neurological diseases, how they function. Unfortunately, our current system is really lacking in several ways, and I just want to present this with an example from my own field of neurology, although this example is applicable to other realms of psychiatry and neurology more broadly. Let's take a 60-year-old that goes to their doctor with the complaints that their memory and their attention is changing. So as you can see in this picture here, maybe some of you have experienced this as well. This is the frustration you feel when you arrive at the refrigerator, only to find that you absolutely have no idea what you're doing there, although you know 7 seconds ago exactly what you wanted to get. Has anyone experienced this in this room here? So, a couple of you, right? Maybe up front. So, in itself, this is not concerning, but if it occurs more and more frequently and your significant other is getting worried, this might be the time that you actually go to your physician and talk to them about these changes. And this is what happens, even at the best medical centers in the world. The first thing is that you get a very poor characterization. The doctor is unlikely to know exactly what's going on with you cognitively. If you're a neurologist or a psychiatrist, you're likely to get a better evaluation. But what's happening in your brain to lead to these changes is going to be entirely unknown. You're not going to really have any functional brain imaging of what the underlying cause of what's frustrating or concerning you. The other thing is that if you are going to get treated, if the doctor is sufficiently concerned, you're likely to get one of these, a pill. Unfortunately, these pills are very poorly targeted, right? So that all the medications we have now for all psychiatric and neurological disorders are blunt instruments. They affect the brain rather globally. They might impact the neurotransmitter system, but they do not impact circuits in our brain, which is the selectivity that we really are looking for. And because they are so blunt, we have to increase the doses to high enough levels to get effects, and then we wind up with side effects. And much of what doctors do today is really just manage the side effects that are caused by the medications that we're using to treat whatever is concerning the patient. The next problem is that it's entirely non-personalized. So the prescription that you get is based on population data, but nowhere taking into account this individual's brain and the distinct aspects of how they process information and what's failing. And so this lack of personalization is a real issue because we know that the population that's studied is very heterogeneous. And so what might work for one person might not work for exactly another person equally. And this is the status that we find ourselves in now. The other problem is that the prescription is likely to be unimodal. And by that, I mean that you're going to get one treatment, likely a drug. Even though that we know from a lot of data, for example, that physical exercise is important for brain health, you're unlikely to see that in a medical prescription along with a pill. The last problem is that it's an open loop system. So I know a lot of people here are engineers, and I know engineers know quite well that if you want to change something, the approach you take is a closed loop system, meaning that when you do something, you record as rapidly as possible with as low latency what the effect was, and then you reapply based on that data, and you wind up with a feedback loop. This is how you change a system. This is exactly the opposite of how our current medical system works. We give you this pill with all these associated problems that I just described. You go home with it, you come back months later with a subjective impression about what changed in terms of effects and side effects. And then a decision's made, not on empirical data, about how to go up or down on the dose, the adjustments made, and months pass again. We have long latency and a lack of quantitative data that's used in that feedback. This is really just not good enough. This is not where we should find ourselves in 2014 in the way that we treat this wide range of diseases that inflict so many people. And so one of my goals, and the goal of my lab, is to create a new system. And we've been working on this for 10 years now, and we know that we have a long road in front of us. But I want to show you now an example of what we've done and where we're heading to create a system that's targeted, personalized, multimodal, and closed loop. If not to replace our current system, but to supplement it and make it much more effective. The first step is to understand the target, because if you don't know what the target is, you're unlikely to be able to have an impact. To do that, my lab uses these set of tools: functional MRI, EEG, transcranial magnetic and electrical stimulation. From this, we learn how neural networks in the brain underlie higher order abilities and how they change in different conditions, like aging, which is a population, older adults, healthy older adults that we focus on. Next, we try to build the engine. An engine of change. How do you build an engine? Well, how we built it is that we take advantage of this phenomena, brain plasticity or neuroplasticity. This is the ability of our brain to modify itself, its structure, its function, its chemistry, all in responses to new experiences. It's the basis of learning. For a long time, we thought that this ended after critical stages of development. We know that is not true, but this continues throughout your entire life. Our engine is just to harness this natural phenomena. If this didn't exist, I would not be speaking to you here today. It's the fact that our brain has this ability to modify itself, and that this ability does not go away and is always present, is really what we try to capitalize on and to harness. Let's take a look at the full landscape of approaches that might be used to enhance cognitive abilities. Well, first, you can apply a very particular and specific type of environment. This will drive plasticity in a way that you, as a society, feel is positive, right? It guides traditional education, other things like meditation, enriched environments. So if you apply a very particular experience, the brain will respond to it, and you could move a brain in a certain direction. The other approach that should be on the list is pharmaceuticals. Although they're blunt instruments, we know that they do have an impact on cognition because they impact neurotransmitters, and neurotransmitters are the guiding principle that governs how our brain processes information. So these drugs that are listed here were developed for medical illnesses like ADHD, narcolepsy, Alzheimer's disease. But we know, for example, drugs like Adderall are used on college campuses all around the world to try to boost cognition. So we want to keep those on the list at least as possibilities. The other is that physical exercise and nutrition. We know that things that are good for your body are good for your brain. Your brain is part of your body. We have an incredible amount of evidence that physical exercise, especially in the form of aerobic exercise, is important for brain health. Neurofeedback. There's an accumulation of evidence, although still in the early stages, that being able to see and hear and experience your own physiology, like a form of biofeedback, might allow you to be able to control it and improve how it operates. The other approach is neuromodulation. We can stimulate the brain electrically, magnetically, either internally through implanted electrodes or at the level of the scalp, and we're now accumulating data that you can actually change plasticity to increase it by applying certain currents, even in the form of very low currents, like a 9-volt battery, to the surface of the scalp. So these are things that we're considering and how they work together to improve cognition. I want to pause now and mention another one that many of you might be fond of, video games. We know that video games are now a global phenomenon. The average age of a gamer is now in the late 30s. We know that they are more gender equal than they've ever been. I would propose that they are the most powerful form of media, given that they're both interactive and they're fun. And we know that they have a strong influence on behavior. That's obvious. The question is, can they actually have a positive impact? Can we think about video games beyond their role in entertainment? I want to read to you a quote from Time magazine from 1982. "Video games are just another manifestation of human mania, our endearing quality of going relentlessly after absolutely pointless goals." So there has been the view that video games really end right there. They're fun, but that's the most that they're ever going to do. There's now an emergence of really interesting data, not done by my own lab, but by others, showing that commercial video games, like action video games, first-person shooters, have been found to have an impact on improving cognitive control abilities in young adults that play them. So attentional allocation, resistance of distraction, working memory, task switching. And so there's this budding pool of literature that leads us to believe that these type of rich, immersive, fun, interactive environments might be a tool that we can shape how a brain functions. And so 5 years ago, I asked my lab the question, can we develop a custom-designed video game built from scratch to enhance cognitive abilities in older adults? So we spent years understanding what changes in the brain of older adults, so we knew what the target was. We understood the engine in terms of plasticity, and the way to harness it, at least our idea, was to use the mechanics of video games. And so I met with friends of mine that worked at LucasArts at the time, and I went to them with this idea of a video game to challenge older adults in the domain that they're most weak in, which is their ability to deal with multiple streams of information in a distracting environment. And this is what grew out of our research. And they told me that they'd be delighted to work with us. After spending their entire careers teaching teenagers how to kill aliens, they thought that this might be a bridge to something different for them. And I found that with supplying some sushi and beer, you can get AAA game developer, artists, video game programmers, developers in your lab to work with your postdocs and students and actually create something really new. I'm going to show you an early version of this game, just try to talk through to what we built. So what's happening in this game is that you're trying to keep your car on a road that's winding in all directions, going up hills using a joystick, and then these signs appear. And you have to respond as rapidly as possible and as accurately only to the target sign. So a green circle, not a red circle, not a green pentagon, which is very hard to not respond to, especially as you get older. And so you play these two tasks at the same time. One of the secret ingredients here, or special ingredients, that's not secret since we certainly tell everyone about it, is that these tasks are adaptive, meaning that as you perform better, the game detects that and adjusts the challenge level to be appropriate for you, so keeping you right in the sweet spot, or what our game developers would call a flow state. Essentially, not making it too hard that it's frustrating or too easy that it's boring. And so the game is constantly challenging you, and the reward cycles are integrated into this adaptivity, so that you only really level up in this game if both of those skills get better, so that you can't trade off between them. And what we do is we built a version of this game that you could play it inside an MRI scanner. You could play with an EEG cap, so we could see what's going on in your brain while you interact with this game. And so we look at what happens in your brain while you play it beforehand, as well as a whole other battery of cognitive skills that we test. Then you take a laptop home, and I say you, this is older adults, 60 to 80-year-olds that are involved in this experiment. They play it for a month, 1 hour a day, 3 days a week for a month, so 12 hours of gameplay. Then they come back into the lab, and we see what has changed in their ability to play the game, what's changed in their brain, and what's changed in terms of other cognitive abilities. So I'm just going to show you a quick snapshot of some of the data. The first thing is that we could use the game as a diagnostic. So that red line at the top means 0%, means that you perform as well doing that sign task when you do it alone as when you're also driving. So that means you multitask perfectly. You don't suffer what we call a cost. And if you ask most 20-year-olds what their cost would be, they pretty uniformly say 0. But we know that's not the case. So if we look at 20-year-olds on the axis, over here on the x-axis we have decades of life. 20-year-olds drop 27% in performance on the sign task when they drive concurrently. We already know that older adults are going to suffer a decrement because we've been studying that for years. What happens in between? What happens as we move across the lifespan? This is what happens. It's not that you retain these abilities until you're 69 years old and then plummet in one tragic year. You actually change every year of your life. As a matter of fact, the biggest difference between two adjacent decades are between 20-year-olds and 30-year-olds. What's not part of the paper but part of our new data is if you look at 8 to 12-year-olds that play the game, this is what you see in terms of their abilities, functioning at around the 40-year-old level. So it's a skill that builds up and then declines linearly across life. So are there any 23-year-olds in the audience today? So if you are, this is the top of your cognitive pyramid. You should really go out and treasure today, because this is sort of as good as it's going to get. Okay, so now let's take a look at how we could use the game as a neural diagnostic. So what you're looking at here is a picture of one of our older participants wearing a 64-channel EEG cap. And we're going to focus on a measure that comes from the front part of the brain called theta. It's a low-frequency measure, and you see it associated with activities involving attention and cognitive control and working memory. It's this burst. And what we're interested in is how this burst of activity changes across the lifespan at the most challenging part of the game. So you're driving along the road, you're pushing forward on the joystick to go up a hill, and then a sign comes up. You have to make a rapid decision. Your performance is constantly adaptive such that you have to go faster and faster as you get better. At that moment, right when that sign comes up, a third of a second after that sign, you get this burst of theta activity from the front part of your brain, as well as coherence across your brain in the theta range. If you're a 20-year-old, this is what it looks like. So there's a scale on the side. You could see yellow is around 3/4 of the way up this power scale. And if you're looking at that image up there, the nose is at the top, the ears are to the side, you're looking down on the head. You see there's this burst, this pyramid, essentially, of theta activity peaking. Let's take a look at the brain of a 70-year-old. This is what we see. There's a peak, but it's not nearly as great. It's only at the green level, only halfway up the curve. So now we have both a neural and a diagnostic marker using this video game. What happens when we take a group of older adults and train them as I described to you? So let's take a look at what happens to their performance on the game as well as what happens to their brains. This is what happens. So even with 12 hours of training in this adaptive interference, immersive environment, we see that we improve the multitasking performance to a level that's better than the 20-year-olds who played it on a single visit, and also have this really profound, well, quite a robust change in this theta activity. It occurs earlier. It also has greater connectivity with the rest of the brain. Something that was deficient is now not distinguishable, even greater than we see in younger adults. We also found that skills that were not trained in the game, that were not part of the game at all, also improved. So their working memory ability, their ability to hold a face in mind for a short period of time, or their vigilance to a very boring target that appears rarely, also improved. Unlike control groups. So there were 2 control groups on that game that did not show this change. And we were rewarded after 5 years of effort with landing on the cover of Nature in September of 2013, which was quite a reward to us for a large team of people on a very high-risk project. And you could see quite generously and sort of terrifying to us, Nature put the tagline "Game Changer" on the cover of the journal. And it then led to me to spend months talking to the media explaining that I'm not necessarily saying that this particular game is the game changer. The game had quite interesting effects, but the idea that you can find a deficit and build a customized game that targets that deficit and then study it in a controlled fashion with mechanisms of action using neural recordings, that is what I hope becomes the game changer. That methodology, that you could think of software in this way as a therapeutic and then go about validating it in a very careful manner. That's what I hope that we continue to see more and more of. The goal now is to move this out of the lab. The lab's a great place to do research, not a great place to develop something. There's no ability to scale or keep up with changing operating systems. It's just not going to happen in a laboratory. So I helped co-found a company and serve as chief science advisor. It's called Achille Interactive Labs, and filed the intellectual property behind this at UCSF. And now we've developed a game, and this team, I actually just serve as an advisor, is building a new game. It's a mobile game so that it's even more accessible. I'm going to show you what that looks like to show you the leap that you can do when you merge a concept from academics and then translate it directly into industry. The interesting part is that a lot of those folks that worked at LucasArts now work full-time for this company, taking those high-level skill sets on video games and bringing it into this domain. So I'm going to pull this up, and I'm going to talk over this video, point out some features. So you'll see that the tasks are the same. There is the sign task and the driving task like you saw before, but now it's in a much richer, immersive, fluid environment using the accelerometer on the iPad as opposed to a joystick in this case. Lots of reward cycles figured into this game. Again, you only level up and get the big rewards if both skills go up. So that's the real trick, is preserving what we call the cognitive engine behind it, but bringing in a high level of art, music, and story. This is how we try to attain the immersiveness and engagement that we think is critical for plasticity. The skills and the challenges go up as you move through the game. If we test this on young children and kids, all they really want to do is customize their avatar. So we have that in there as well. Lots of environments so that people play over a long period of time. So that's a little look at what you can do when you work closely with trust and respect between a team of scientists and a team of game designers and programmers and artists, is that you try not to essentially ignore each other, but really try to pay attention to each other and build something that hits that sweet middle ground where you retain all the scientific features, but you make something that's truly fun and playable. Now, of course, that game itself has to be tested. The company made an interesting decision, one which I agree with, is that it is not going to be available as a consumer product, at least not right now, but the goal is to see if it can go through an FDA pathway and essentially become the world's first prescribed video game. So that's the goal. There's now several populations that are being studied. You could see them up here: ADHD, depression, dementia, autism. An interesting change, an event occurred that we now have two investors in this company. One is Pfizer, which makes Aricept for Alzheimer's disease, and the other is Shire, which makes Adderall for ADHD. So I think it's an interesting sign of the times and maybe the changing of the tide that we have big pharma investing in video game companies. But the future will hold the answer for us as far as where we go with this, if we can actually bring this into the clinic as a new therapeutic. Our lab is now developing new games. We have an internal distraction game that sort of brings the principles of concentrative meditation and integrates them with the game mechanics we talked about. We're using new technologies, new platforms from the Kinect to get full body motion capture, to develop a game that challenges you both physically and cognitively at the same time, to a project using the Oculus Rift to create a virtual environment for deeper immersion, better engagement, and see if that can lead to bigger effects. The last thing I want to close with is boosting the effects. What we want to now do is take the video games, which really just serve as the engine, right? They activate the circuit, and see if we can make our effects even greater than we've seen. And to do that, we combine neuromodulation and neurofeedback. In order to bring in neural signals into the closed loop, we need one important feature. We need it to be in real time. And this is the challenge that our big team over here has faced. This has been a really active collaboration between my lab and the Swartz Center at UCSD. And what we're trying to do, and this is really where CUDA-enabled processing and the GPU really comes in. It's a large problem. There's lots of independent sources in the brain that we're trying to localize. And in addition, we're trying to do it fast, as close as we can get to zero latency. As we get the latency lower and lower, this becomes a more valuable signal for us, not just to understand how the brain is functioning in real time, but then to use as a signal that we can tie back into our therapeutics. So let me show you a little bit of what that looks like. First, I want to point out that we already have a closed-loop system with our video games. Something occurs in the brain, it leads to a behavior in the game, like you press a sign, you turn to avoid an iceberg. The game senses that in real time, changes its dynamics, right? Its reward structure, its adaptivity, it gets harder, it gets faster. It feeds back a new environment, and you change the brain. So we already have that low latency closed loop between what goes on in your brain and how we challenge it. Once we have real-time EEG, and we're going to show you an example of a new project very soon, we can then take that data and feed it directly into the video game so that the mechanics of the game, the adaptivity, the reward cycles can be adjusted to what's going on in your brain in real time. So in essence, the game will be diagnosing weaknesses in how your brain processes information and use that to challenge you. So like a surgeon sculpting the processes in your brain, we think we could get a much more selective effect on rewiring these circuits. The other thing that we could do is we could stimulate the brain. We could take the real-time EEG data. This is a cap. In this cap from a company, Neuroelectrics, these electrodes both record activity and can be used to stimulate the brain at DC and AC. And so, if we see that there's a frequency that can be optimized, we could feed that data into the system and then back into the brain and stimulate at that frequency. And so what we're looking at here, I'm just going to summarize with one slide, is right now in 2014, when someone comes in with a memory problem, this is what they get. They get a pill that's blunt in how it affects the entire brain. What I hope we see as soon as 2019 is that we could increasingly use custom targeted video game to activate circuits that are deficient. Then take these EEG signals, feed them into the game, and cycle it back in to the system to challenge the brain in a very selective way to work on specific neural processes. Likewise, we could take neural signals, channel it into like a cap that does both stimulation and recording, and use that to increase plasticity. So if you have a traumatic brain injury or a stroke or some area of your brain that needs a little extra boost in order to respond to these challenges, this might be the way we can do it. So this is a view of the future, but it's something that's actively going on in our lab. So what we have here is a targeted, personalized, multimodal, and closed-loop approach that we think will really bring in a new generation of therapeutics to improve how the brain functions. Over the next 10 years, we plan on moving this out of our lab to other clinical conditions through collaborations. And all of these names up here of these conditions are there because we've already started the conversation with physician scientists that focus on these different debilitating medical illnesses and conditions. Another thing that's really interesting is to think about the role of this in education. And so I'm not going to go too far into this, but there is potentially an approach that's similar to the one that we just described from a medical perspective that can be used to improve cognition in our brains throughout our lives as a different perspective on how we might think about education. We built a new lab at UCSF, not more than an hour from here, that you could see depicted over here. What we realized over the years is that we didn't actually have a laboratory to do the experiments that I just described to you. So we essentially built a laboratory that would look like a very high-level multimedia lab, but it's right inside our neurology, neuroscience, and psychiatry clinic, so that we can have access to the scientists that study these conditions, as well as the patient populations. Another thing that's very interesting to us is to use devices that are affordable and already in the consumer market. So if we could take these consumer-facing devices and reimagine them and validate them as scientific tools, we have a greater ability to move them out into the real world and to hopefully impact people's lives. So that's what we're now doing to lead to the changes that we hope this technology will bring. Okay. I'm now going to show you a demo that I think you're going to find very fun and exciting of some new technology that we're working on in a very large collaborative project to do exactly what I just told you. We call it Rhythm in the Brain. This is a collaboration that started with a conversation between myself and Mickey Hart, the legendary percussionist from the Grateful Dead. And Mickey, who is a dear friend now and also my rhythm mentor, never ceases to tell me that rhythm has always been here, started with the Big Bang. You could see it at every level of resolution, from atoms to the movement of galaxies. You see it in the sun itself, which fuels life on Earth. You see it across almost every pattern on our Earth, both the structure, weather, life itself, and you see it in the brain. We've known for a long time that our brain has rhythms of neural activity that you see at many different frequencies distributed throughout the brain. And not only that, but that brain areas communicate with each other through synchronization of rhythms across these, what are very large distances in the brain. We now know that this is a fundamental feature of how our brain works, and it's related to higher order abilities like attention, memory, and perception. Rhythm has been used for thousands of years across many cultures as a therapeutic tool. There's emerging data that music training early in life can lead to an improvement about how your brain processes information when you're older. Can we build a game to train people to be more rhythmic, to improve the rhythms of their brain and the timing of their brain, since that's essentially what rhythm is, and lead to an improvement in their cognition? That's the question that we're asking here. So we're going to show you some brand new technology today that is a proof of concept. It's the first pass. Although it's the end of a very long road for us in terms of development, it's really just the beginning in terms of now doing the experiments that we need to do to use this. So what you're going to see in just a short while are two very high-tech demos that we're going to do simultaneously. On this side of your room, your left, you're going to see something that we call Neurodrummer. And what you're going to see is Mickey Hart from the Grateful Dead, who's here with us today, is going to put on an Oculus Rift and play a drumming game called Neurodrummer that will, in future renditions, be challenging rhythm. And here, I'll tell you a little bit about the details of the game in a second. So Mickey will be playing Neurodrummer. You're going to see the classic binocular Oculus view up on the side, and you're going to see a higher resolution view in the middle. On your right side of the room, you're going to see something that we call the Glass Brain. And what the Glass Brain is a large collaborative effort, and we have Tim Mullen, who's one of our chief scientists on this project. He's going to also put on an Oculus Rift and then go inside Mickey's functioning brain in real time. So we have sort of like a Neuro-Russian nested dolls thing going on here. We've never done this before, so we're pretty excited to share it with you. I'm just going to dive into a couple more details because you're going to be seeing a lot of stuff, and I want it to make sense. So Neurodrummer is a virtual reality rhythm game. So in addition to playing rhythms, Mickey will also be confronted with a multitasking challenge, which we know, as you've heard already, is something that changes in our brain that we think improving will lead to transfer to other abilities. So you'll see asteroids in this beautiful space world that he'll be in, that he'll have to respond to as rapidly as possible and then re-engage with the rhythm. Mickey's going to be playing this on master level. The new version of the game that we're building is a very simple for people that have no rhythmic ability to just follow basic rhythms. But I know that you do not want to see Mickey just follow some basic rhythm now. So he is going to be playing rhythms, both rhythms that he's created with MIDI release as well as actual drumming, on top of a composition that he's made in the past. there's going to be art and music. So each of the strikes on this percussion instrument will lead to an artistic sort of expression in virtual reality that's part of what we think will lead to more immersion and fun in the game, as well as music. So Mickey had access to sonifications of rhythms of his brain from previous recordings, and he took those into this environment and built a composition called Electrodes that he's going to be playing on top of today. We're trying other things. Mickey's going to have a pulse oximeter on his ear that brings in his heart rate into the game, and you're going to see that in some of the artwork in the game. So eventually, this will come together to be a richer training experience, but we're pretty excited what we built here with brand new technology. The Glass Brain is a virtual reality brain visualization. It could be done in 3D or, as we're going to do here, in virtual reality. It starts with a 3D MRI reconstruction that has both the structure of the brain as well as the connections, what we call the fiber pathways inside the brain. We've done something that I think is rather unique in that we took this data into the Unity game engine, which gives us a lot more interactivity. You can fly through this brain with a joystick or using the sensor in an Oculus Rift or another device. One of the key features is this real-time EEG data that's really taking use of really sophisticated CUDA processing of the GPU and a Tesla card in our machine back here. What we have going on in real time is artifact rejection, so the muscles, the electrical interference in the room. We have predictions made about where the sources are of that actual activity, not just putting them on the electrodes. And we use the MRI data to guide those algorithms. And then effective connectivity, which is essentially a statistical model of how information is flowing between areas and in what direction. And so you're going to see the different source activity as different colors to designate different frequencies. And we take the information about the connectivity, the effective connectivity between areas, and we show that as a flow of light along the scaffolding of the fiber tracks. So that's what you're going to see. Before we show you this great demo, I just have to thank all the people who have volunteered a massive amount of time. I'm just going to go through some highlights here. So Neurodrummer, and these folks are right here. From Studio B, Matt Whitman, Mike Gonzalez. The Electrodes has been helped with work of Jonah Sharp doing production. And Mickey Hart's whole team, and Howard Cohen's been a great service for us. Oculus VR, certainly helping us with Dev Kit. On the Glass Brain side, a tremendous thanks to the Schwartz Center, UCSD, both Tim Mullen, Christian Cothe, who have been developing these algorithms for real-time EEG for a decade now. And it's exciting to bring that expertise into something that is quite beautiful and interactive. So I really owe a lot to those guys. My lab, which is listed here, Oleg Konings, who did the amazing CUDA programming that really allowed us to get very, very low latencies on the data that you're seeing. Cognionics and Brain Vision, who built this amazing 64-channel wireless EEG cap that Mickey's going to be wearing in this demo. And then, of course, NVIDIA for all of their support, especially with the GPUs, and Calissa Cole and Kimberly Powell for all their support over time. So, without further ado, we're going to start this up, and I want to give a big round of applause and invite Mickey Hart up here. Thank you, everyone. All right, so we're just going to set up here. So Mickey is going to dive in. Tim is coming up. He's going to be wearing a Rift as well. I'm going to shut up during this performance so you can just enjoy it, and then I'm going to do a debrief after to tell you all that you've seen. So Tim will be both navigating with a joystick as well as using the Rift. So as I said, he'll be inside the structure of Mickey's brain that'll be functioning in real time. So Mickey previously came down to a lab, had an MRI scan that was all part of the pre-processing that goes into this.
Still there.
Still there. It's a great brain, believe me. I've seen it many times.
A masterpiece.
It's a masterpiece. right. Thank you. Mickey Hart, everyone. All right, let's release him from VR. I can't imagine what that's like, just performing totally blind like that.
Thank you, Dr. Gonzalez. All right.
Mickey, I thought it would be nice for Mickey to say a few words. We've been working together for years now, and putting on these type of events and bringing this to you is an exciting and interesting challenge for both of us. But I wanted Mickey to just give you a little bit of his perspective.
Well, thank you very much, Adam. It's really wonderful. Thank you all for inviting me here. This is very important personally to me because rhythm is my game. It's my life. It makes me whole. We are rhythm machines, multi-dimensional rhythm machines embedded in a universe of rhythm. And what we have on top of our shoulders here is truly a superorganism at work 24/7.
After all that attention to
And so it's the master clock. It tells us what to do, when to do it, and it jams. It's like just like a jam band. It makes its decisions at the last minute and so forth, and it swarms. My grandmother in the 70s had Alzheimer's, and I played a drum for her, and she hadn't spoken in years. I played the drum, she spoke my name. That's power. That's medicine. When I saw that, I knew that vibrations, in this case music, reconnected those broken pathways and allowed her speech, and it brought her cognition back, at least for the time I was drumming. So in many ways, this is for her as well as to all the other people that are affected from these neural diseases, and I hope that this is the beginning of that story. Thank you so much again. Thank you again.
Thanks, Mickey. Thank you. So you can take it off. Thanks, man. All righty, so I'm just going to wrap up now, debrief from what you just saw today. So this is the beginning, as Mickey just said. Our team has worked amazingly hard to get us to this point. At every step of the way, we tried to bring in new technology that we thought could open a doorway to a new type of therapy and a new way of improving how our brains function and cognition. But it's still the beginning. So NeuroDrummer, you saw, again, bringing in high levels of art, music. At some point, it's going to bring in story. The version that we'll use for training will be much pared down from this, so the participant will see rhythms and hear rhythms that they'll have to synchronize with, syncopate with, categorize, memorize, reproduce, classify. Hopefully all these things will come together and improve their rhythmic abilities and will change their brain. The glass brain over here again, is something we're really excited about. The real foundational breakthrough here is all of the work on those algorithms that allow us to process EEG information in real time and to get closer to the sources of activity and to look at connectivity between regions. What we will next do is connect these two things, right? So that the data from here is flowing into the game. The game is using that information to change the challenge and change the brain. So this type of closed loop is really why we really paid so much attention to that EEG data and having it as low latency as possible. What do we do with this beautiful visualization? Well, there's lots of interesting avenues that we're going to pursue. Education alone, being a neurologist that has studied the brain for 20 years, to be able to see it and to put on a virtual reality goggles and dive inside of it is nothing less than an emotional experience. I mean, we've studied this from the outside or in slices for so long, and to be able to manipulate it with the joystick is really quite amazing. Can this be used to help guide surgeons or prepare them for operations to look at pathology in this type of setting? Can it be used to make real-time diagnoses? Can having a participant, a patient of yours that interacts with a video game that's challenging their brain in a certain way, and a physician that's actually looking at their brain in real time, can that make an impact? We don't know. It's an interesting area of research. And then, of course, can we use these EEG signals for these closed loops? what would it be like to enter your own brain and play a video game in the structure, in that area, having your challenge be to guide the neural processing that you're seeing so that you could learn how to control how your brain processes information, sort of like a very high-tech view of biofeedback in the structure of your brain. So these are things that we think about. They're still the very beginning days, but we're excited to share it with you, and hopefully at some point you'll be able to hear where we went with all of this. So at that note, I want to thank you all for your attention and for being here. We have a couple of websites if you want to follow our research. My own lab's website, Ghazali Lab, or gazlab.com is a quick way to get there. Neuroscape Lab has a website, and Rhythm in the Brain, Mickey and I have our collaborative page. So I encourage you to follow this research over time and to participate as you might be interested. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for coming to GTC. We hope to see you next year on April 28th. And as you leave, please remember that the expo floor is open until 1:30 p.m. Have a great day.